This is a trigger warning for this episode. Sorry, we're doing like 2 episodes really close together. This episode is going to talk about issues with race as well as talks of abuse. If that's not your thing, we'll see you next week where we talk about TikTok actually that time. But this episode is something we feel we need to talk about as people who are in theater and have experienced some of this.
Why, hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the We're Trying podcast, featuring AJ for the first minute.
Thanks for that lovely
He
intro.
is putting on lipstick for the audio listeners. I'm awkwardly standing behind.
Segment of What's B sipping on today? B is sipping on a venti strawberry acai refresher made with lemonade with an extra scoop of strawberries.
Imagine like a sunset. Like the camera doesn't even do it justice. Like close your eyes, audio listeners. You don't even have to do anything. Imagine a nice glowing sunset. And you know, like the pinky orangey hues?
Yes.
Just before like the sky starts turning purpley.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Wow.
Like the drink looks like it's glowing.
Oh my goodness.
In the light. It's gorgeous.
Wow.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
I will let you get to actually starting this podcast.
Also, congratulations to B for not wearing the same shirt again. Because I wore the same shirt for the podcast 2 weeks in a row. But now I'm wearing another cardigan. It's just brown.
It's just brown this time. Okay, good luck with the podcast, you two.
Good luck. Oh.
Thanks. My name is B.
And my name is Aurora. We're here to entertain you. Maybe.
This week's gonna be...
This week's a little heavy.
Yeah.
So we were going to do a week where B talks about TikTok and TikTok culture and what it's like being a TikTok influencer. But there is a topic that we think is maybe a little bit more important for us to talk about right now, and that is the abuse in theater. So in case you didn't know, both of us are theater people. We both went to the same college in the same musical theater performance program. And, you know, it's a part of our lives. That's how we became friends. I don't even really know where to start with this.
Karen Olivo, they have recently come out and said they will not be returning to their role in Moulin Rouge because of abuse that they were facing within the theater industry and on Broadway and what they don't want to return to. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Moulin Rouge themselves has come out and said, hey, we completely respect what Karen is doing. They are making, you know, proper steps to what they need, and we support them, which is good. But it opens up a conversation that we want to have today about, I mean, we can only speak as white people. We cannot speak as people of color. I think this would have been a really great podcast to bring possibly some POC friends on and talk.
So even before the Karen Olivo video, did you hear about the Scott Rudin story?
No.
Okay. Scott Rudin is a very influential Broadway producer, and reports surfaced through the New Yorker that he was verbally and emotionally abusing his employees, including one instance where he crushed someone's hand in a laptop, etc., among other things. I don't know what triggered the Scott Rudin story breaking, but it has influenced a lot of performers to speak out. And I think what's really, really important about this topic, more so than just like, it's important to talk about this. What's important to note here is that a lot of the media outlets that cover Broadway did not talk about it at all, did not talk about the Scott Rudin story. But as soon as Karen Olivo was like, I'm leaving Moulin Rouge, they were like, hey, this is weird. Karen Olivo is not going back to Moulin Rouge. That's weird. So I think as much as we need to discuss the abuse in theater, we also need to discuss what I'm considering the scare tactics in theater. I saw a tweet 2 days ago, yesterday. We're filming this on Monday, by the way, just so you get it. Just things are happening later this week that we aren't going to be able to talk about in this podcast because they happen after. But at this time, it is 4:30 on Monday. I saw a tweet 2 days
The
ago.
19th of April.
Yes.
Said that.
2 days ago that said something like, part of the issue, not just that there's these people who are abusing their power, but part of the issue is that we enter into college at 18 years old, and it is scared into us that we must comply. So we become too afraid to speak up.
Do we want to talk a little bit about our own experiences with that in theater school?
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
Let's start with Karen Olivo, because I think talking about their story is
Important. Yeah.
more important as a person of color, especially.
Mhm.
I'm no stranger to the fact that people of color definitely have it harder than white people.
Oh my goodness, yes.
We're not shy to that. The abuse within the theater industry, and I guess like the manipulation is a good word to use, I think. Again, this, I'm just going to say this isn't scripted for people who are listening or watching. So if we say something that's a little off or it's not well worded, that is why this episode doesn't really have any talking points either. We didn't make any notes. We just feel like we need to discuss this. People of color are manipulated into thinking that they need to be as white passing as possible in order to succeed. Change the way that you're singing, change the way your body looks to look more like the Western ideal of a beautiful person, which is a white person, unfortunately. And that is one of the biggest things I think that's overlooked in the theater industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like because, you know, theater has always been deemed as like this is what the nerds do, you know, when it becomes like the career path of theater, we're still like, well, you know, that's where all the outcasts went. So that means all outcasts are welcome there. But the gatekeeping in theater, like you can't be an outcast. You can only be their brand of outcast. And on top of the Karen Olivo stuff that came out, there was a lot of information coming out about Jagged Little Pill. That's the Alanis Morissette jukebox musical. The news broke of this, I think, a week before the Karen Olivo, so it would have been sort of in time with the Scott Rudin thing, where it's turned out that one of the characters, I'm forgetting the character's name, the character's name was Joe. One of the characters in the original out-of-town tryouts of the show and through all of the workshops of the show was non-binary. And it was a big, big deal that this character was non-binary. It was very, very exciting. They cast a cis white woman in the role. But one of the other people who was involved in creating that character is non-binary. But for whatever reason, when the show moved to Broadway, they kept the character's storyline, but removed everything of the character that was non-binary to fit the binary. But the storyline stays the same. So they've literally erased what made the character so unique and special, but still given them that story. Well, the question, then becomes why? Why? Like, if you think about the theater and the outcast idea, why is it something that can't happen on a Broadway stage? Why?
I guess I'm somebody that can talk about like the gender issues within theater.
Definitely.
I'm a person, as you can see if you're watching, I use she, they pronouns. Sometimes I'm just like, use any pronouns. I'll even go with he. I'll use neo pronouns. I don't really care. But mostly I go by she, they. There are no non-binary characters. There are no non-binary characters that at least I know of. And so when I heard that they had the character Joe non-binary, I was like, that's something I could play one day. That they are non-binary. Like, that's finally we're getting a non-binary character in theater, and then they cast a cis person. It's like, well, but don't you want to write a non-binary character to be played by a non-binary character? It's like having a gay character. You would probably want somebody in the LGBTQ plus community to play that character.
Mhm.
If a role is written for a person of color, that role should be played by a person of color, especially for these marginalized groups where there aren't a lot of roles. White people can play so many roles.
Yeah.
White people take roles from people of color.
Yeah.
And I will stand by that. Nobody can argue with me on that. So why not take these roles that can be played like by only a person of color, or only a person who is non-binary, only a person in the LGBTQ plus community, have them play those roles?
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense.
I do have a question for you. What is your take on, with people of color, obviously, you have to cast that way. What is your take specifically on casting a straight person in an LGBT role if the person who wrote it is part of the LGBT community?
I think if a straight person is going to play a role of an LGBTQ plus character, they need to be educated on what they're talking about and what role they're playing and why they're playing. I think if a person is well educated and knows that, like, this is why this story needs to be told,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. But if you're just like, big name straight person, let's have you in this show because you're a big name, it's like, well, why not cast a smaller upcoming artist that could kickstart a queer performer's career?
Yeah, but that's the big thing, what you just said there, a big name. Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to money.
Always.
Always. The thing about Broadway, and I was saying this earlier to somebody, is that Broadway is just a street. That's it. What constitutes a Broadway theater? 500 seats in New York, in the Broadway area. Broadway's a street. The reason why it's so notorious is because of the money behind it, because of the stock trade in New York and the port city, because it was a massive trading center back in the day, because then the stock market was built there. And because of the influx of money and business related to the stock market, all these white men are like, what am I going to invest in now? Theater. That is literally the only reason. So anything to make money is what's going to sell, is what they're going to try to sell. But it doesn't mean that that's all there is. And we have this like ideal of like the perfect Broadway look. There's so many things about Broadway body, getting your body ready for Broadway, you know? Like the amount, I remember I almost bought a shirt at one point that was like, that literally said something like preparing my Broadway body or something like that. And like, yeah, I want to be in like that Broadway shape, whatever. What is that? What, like, there is not a shape, there is not a look, but they instill this in us because the people with money, that's what they want to look at.
I think bringing it back to like we bring in unique people, the outcasts. They bring in the outcasts, and then when you're in theater school, say, okay, you come in any shape, size, we're so inclusive. Now that you're here and you've paid us thousands of dollars, lose weight, sing like this, change your sound.
Yeah.
You need to look like this. You need to have your hair looking like this, and this color isn't going to make people cast you, which there are people, what's her name? Annalise something. She's on TikTok, really big. And she's talked about, like, you know, if you want to dye your hair on Broadway, you can dye your hair when you're on Broadway. If you want to get a piercing, you can get a piercing. If you want to get a tattoo, you can get a tattoo. Because there's makeup, there's wigs.
Yeah.
theater school and coming into the industry, of course, I'm bringing it back to theater school, but it tears down so much of your originality and then tosses you into the industry and says sink or swim. When in reality, what the people who are up and coming in the industry, what I want to see is uniqueness. I want to hear a different sound. I want to see someone with bright blue hair on stage. I want to see that. That's cool.
As a producer now, which is so weird to say, but as a producer now, like this idea that you judge people based on their headshots is very real. It is very, very real. When you go into a professional theater audition, I'm putting that in quotations, when you go in, they expect your headshot to look like insert image here. They want it to be like jewel tone shirt, hair either like perfectly curled like you're a doll or hair pinned straight. They want you to have your biggest megawatt smile on and you're probably blonde or a brunette. And that is what they expect from you because that is what a musical theater performer supposedly looks like. But when you see 50 people in a day who have the same headshot, the same everything, it makes it difficult to find humanity. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Because when you look at people who are just constantly the same, it feels like the humanity, the uniqueness, the oneness has been taken out. I want to see Karen Olivo be Karen Olivo on stage. I don't want to see Karen Olivo forced into a situation where they cannot be themselves and be their best self. You know, if Karen Olivo walked into an audition and I know this is probably what they wore when they were auditioning for In the Heights, was like the jewel tone. They had the pin straight hair, like fine. And that's what, like, that helps get cast because that's what people expect. But if Karen Olivo walks in now with their curly short hair and their glasses and everything, it immediately changes your perception of what they can play. But we know from their roles in the Heights and Moulin Rouge and West Side Story, their playability is very large. But the minute you walk into the room not looking like the ingenue, they assume you can't play the ingenue, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a fun story from Aurora. I did an intensive a couple of years ago, and this was at the height of me being like, I'm going to be a Broadway star. And like, I will be, but like, you know, whatever. And I did this intensive. And at one point, the person who was running it was like, I can look at you immediately and tell you what your character type is. If you want to know, come ask me. So myself and two other girls I was there with, we all went to the same high school. We all went up together. We were like, we'd like to know what our character types are. So it was, they're both taller than me. I'm 5'2" for those listening. Well, you can't even tell I was in the video, but I'm 5'2". And they're both significantly taller than me. So it was tall girl, me, tall girl. It was like a little like dip. And he goes down, like literally goes down the line, like it's a chorus line. And he goes, ingenue, quirky best friend, ingenue. And then turns around and walks away. And I was like, I remember standing there going, I'm not the quirky best friend. I'm not. And then I had to sit back and go like, well, if he's like, he's in the industry, like he knows, and he said he knows, so he must be correct. So I spent the next like 2 or 3 years completely changing all of my rep because I was like, well, I can't play the ingenue because he told me I wasn't an ingenue. Therefore, I can't play an ingenue because I'm small, because I am not a size 2, because yeah, I don't know why. Why? Because I make silly faces and do funny voices. I don't know. So I changed all of my rep, and I was like fully prepared. I am the secondary character, fine. But I kept going in the back of my head, but Sally Bowles isn't the secondary character, but I want to play Sally Bowles. Eliza Doolittle isn't the secondary character, but I want to play Eliza Doolittle, you know? And I was sort of in my head being like, well, there are roles that I want to play, but I guess I just never will because that's not my character type. Then I got to college and I walked into one of my first vocal tutorials and I brought in, I don't even remember what song I brought in. And the tutorial teacher, who wasn't there when you came to school, but he turns to me and he goes, you should sing, I don't know which song, this song here. And I was like, no, I don't really think I would ever play that character. And he goes, yeah, you would. Why do you not think so? I was like, well, I'm not an ingenue. And he went, what's an ingenue? And I was like the female lead. And he was like, no, I know what it is. You can play whatever the hell you want. And I was like, but I was told that what are you talking about? Point being, one person's opinion is not correct, but they will try and tell you it is correct. And that's
especially when it comes from a person where you're like, in the end, we're not in the Broadway New York industry.
Mhm.
So when somebody from New York who's been on Broadway, who's worked on Broadway tells you something, who else are we going to get our information from? When we're getting information from our teachers at school who have worked for many years in this industry, who else do we have to believe?
Exactly.
So that's kind of going along with like the manipulation, the gaslighting of you have to do this. Rather than trying to change the industry, we're still stuck in this size 2 bottle blonde look.
Yeah.
Like blue eyes, you need to be 6 feet tall. Like we're still stuck in that.
Yeah.
Because all we've ever had to believe as people who are learning is the people who have been in the industry when that was the thing. And so that's what the big head of the industry is trying to condition us to do, so it stays that way, because that's what they know makes them money.
Yeah.
It all comes back to money.
I screenshotted a bunch of tweets this week as I saw them, and I saw one from a guy named David Gordon. And the tweet said, it's really sad to watch so many people realize the theater industry just doesn't want to detoxify itself. It goes beyond the Rudin stuff. It goes beyond the Jagged stuff. It goes beyond the equity stuff, which we can get to in a second. The theater industry doesn't want to change. And then Casey Mink responded saying, why literally would it when the power structures ensure cis white men will stay rich as hell without having to endure any of the pesky widespread pressure to evolve that Hollywood has faced? And that's, yeah. Why would they change if it makes them money? Why? Why would they? And I think another thing that they've discovered is, I mean, this, everybody knows this, sex sells. And if you can get quote unquote sexy people, whatever that means to one person, if you can get those people in your show.
Whatever that means to straight white men.
Yes, exactly. And I think one of the saddest parts of all of this is that the people who now have to deal with it and deal with changing it, again, quote unquote, are the people who've endured the abuse. You don't see the biggest names in theater talking about this because they're these big names. They make money. Maybe they're talking about it behind closed doors, and that's fine. That's how some people deal with it. But it's the ensemble members, it's the smaller performers, it's the performers of color that you see talking about this.
In the article you sent me of the interview that Karen Alibo had with this article writer, news reporter, they've said that people will DM them and say, oh, good for you for speaking out about this. And she wants to reply with, you realize I'm doing your job.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I read that, I was like, that's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rather than expecting that the people who have endured the abuse to come out and talk about it, even if you feel you haven't endured it, one, you probably have if you're in the theater industry, because again, it's all to make money. You are all brainwashed into thinking that you need to fit into this box in order to be successful. We all have. Don't just rely on the marginalized communities to speak up about it.
Yeah.
Do your fucking part. Like,
yeah.
We all have, and this is going to sound like weird to say, but we have a responsibility as people who, work for an up and coming theater companies, people who are writing shows. We have a responsibility to, as we begin to climb up in the theater industry and, put on shows, create new shows, produce things, create these changes. You can't just expect you know, be like, oh, a couple POC performers are going to speak up and like that'll be fine. No, you need to do your fucking part.
Like,
I just got heated.
no, but you're right. You are 100% right. If something comes up, and I always say this, even like out of this context, like if something comes up and somebody has something to say about something that you have done, even if you don't immediately go, yes, I did that and that was wrong, you affected somebody. You need to take ownership of that. I don't care if it's, I ate your loaf of bread that was in the fridge and you were hoping to save that. Like, fine, take ownership for eating the bread. You ate the bread. If it is a bunch of actors coming at you saying you are verbally and emotionally abusing us, and you have been for years, you've been wrecking our body, refusing to pay us properly, refusing to give us sick leave. Even if you're like, I don't see that, I don't care. You take ownership of that, because if people aren't going to make that up, you hurt people, you take ownership, even if you didn't intend to hurt people.
Ignorance is bliss.
Isn't
That's
it?
the biggest thing to come back to is ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And forcing yourself to not research as anybody in the theater community, because again, this is a responsibility I think we all have as people who are young, coming up in the theater industry. And someday we are going to be the backbone of this industry. We are going to be what keeps it going.
Yeah.
Someday it's not going to be the 65-year-old straight white men. It's going to be us one day.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to educate yourself on, I guess, like what not to do. Like, one, learn to take fucking responsibility for your shit. Two, listen to people. Learn. Yeah. If a person of color is speaking up, listen to them.
Yeah. Don't
try and say, well, I've experienced this. Like, be like, yeah, no, like uplift them.
Yeah. Like it.
Let people speak about the issues they've gone through. Don't say, well, because I haven't experienced that, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
No, if somebody's saying shit's happening. You have to believe them.
There's an initiative right now on Instagram that's being run by a bunch of Canadian actors. You've probably seen it. It's called Curtain Up, I believe. Curtain Up 2021. You can find them on Instagram. They launched on World Theater Day. And what they're doing is they are collecting anonymous and known people's reports of the abuse they endured in theater school, in theater institutions. And it's here in their bio, a movement to end toxicity in arts education. And they talk, like they're posting people's reports, not only of racial discrimination and of like LGBT discrimination, but of fat shaming and eating disorders and refusing to let people take breaks and things. And they
I could talk about that from school so much.
So could I. But they posted a couple of days ago that on April 24th, they're going to be directing a call to action towards a specific post-secondary institution. So, and this is the issue with certain musical theater institutions. I can't speak for every single one, obviously, but for certain is that they don't necessarily want a singular performer. They want the numbers. They're more concerned with being able to say, we have the most successful alumni. So they will churn out people who are perfect to fit in an ensemble at 21 years old when they graduate. But then, when they start going to like open calls for leads, it's harder because that uniqueness, that thing that made them uniquely you, they were told was bad. Which I know we spoke about briefly earlier, but like that's at the end of the day, one of the most toxic behaviors in theater education, I think. Because the minute you tell someone that your voice doesn't sound like a crystal clear bell or whatever, so you can't do this and this and this, you hurt them and you hurt their humanity and what makes them them, And that's kind of, I think that's definitely one of the things that I think Curtain Up is trying to bring light to, is that of course, on top of the racial discrimination and LGBT discrimination. And
Yeah, everyone, whoever's listening, go support Curtain Up. I've seen a couple of people that we have gone to college with talk about their experiences, and it was super eye-opening to hear firsthand of what especially POC have had to deal with. And I have my own slew of stories, but if you like, especially POC actors, listen to what they need to say, especially if you're white. Most of my stories have to do with body image and gender stuff, of course. Support them. That's a good initiative that they're working towards, and I think that's something that we need to start pushing out.
Another really, really good initiative to look towards, and this goes to people who live outside of Canada as well. These are Canadian based, but they're doing really, really great work, is Everybody on Stage, which
Yes,
is...
I follow them. They're amazing.
Yeah, their initiative is to prove that no matter what your body looks like, you belong on stage. And they're doing some wonderful, wonderful work over there.
Oh, I can talk a lot about body image and how I'm going to tell a story about
Please, go ahead.
my experience in school. I am taking a year off of school. I will be returning to the same school where this teacher said this to me. We're in class, and basically you do a scene and then a song. This was the class. And I asked for suggestions of songs I could sing, characters I could play. And he looked at me and said, this like old man, middle-aged man, looked at me and said, if you dressed a little more revealing, you could play sexy. That is the most uncomfortable I've felt in a while. Because I was like, an old man telling me I can be sexy. Or another experience, I grew up a ballet dancer. I am classically trained through the Shakti Council of America for ballet. I did for years. I loved ballet. I got to college, and our ballet teacher made so many comments about my body that I nearly fell into a relapse. Literally, like, this close to falling into a relapse. I started counting calories again, looking up prices for scales so I could weigh myself, measuring my body checking. Body image in the theater industry is, at least something that I've experienced, the worst part of the industry for what I've experienced. Again, I'm not a POC. I haven't experienced that. But from what I myself have experienced, the physical attributes of what you can look like is always this cookie cutter. And, you know, I've had some teachers tell me, oh, you could play sexy if you dressed like this. Or, no, you couldn't play sexy. You're more of like a conservative, like Guys and Dolls. In 1 year, I think one teacher switched between telling me I could play Adelaide back to Sarah is her name. To Sarah, and then 2 weeks later it was Adelaide, and then the next week it was Sarah, and then a month later it was Adelaide, and it literally changed all the time, depending on what I was wearing, what my hair looked like that day, whether or not I had accidentally lost a little bit of weight or accidentally gained a little bit of weight, which weight gain and weight loss happens. Like, did you know that a person with a uterus who has a period, you can gain up to 7 pounds when you're on your period?
Yeah.
So you can't, because of someone's body type and what number they weigh, I refuse to put my weight on my resume. If I'm ever like signed by an agency that's like, you need to put your weight on your resume, I'm not doing it. Like, no. Because why does my weight matter?
My weight does not define me.
No matter what I weigh, if I can still do a crazy 8-minute tap number and then stop and continue to belt, who cares? Who cares? Who fucking cares? And that's not even getting into the gender stuff I've experienced. Because again, there's no non-binary characters. So if I'm ever like, I would like to sing this song that's normally sang by a male, but I want to sing it because I am non-binary, I am gender fluid, I'm going to sing this song. Just straight up being told, no, you can sing female repertoire and female repertoire only. Which, no, I can sing many things. I can do Moving Too Fast from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Who fucking cares?
Really, who cares? Honestly, who cares?
Straight white men care.
Straight white men.
Straight white men.
Have I ever told you specifically what one teacher told me about my body? I don't think I have. So I also deal with disordered eating. And when I started at college, I was on a really, really good path to healing myself and everything. And as one of our very first classes with this teacher, she talked about health and how to be healthy. And
I remember this class.
I cannot tell you exactly what she said. I have all the notes still because I'm crazy and I keep everything, but I cannot remember exactly what she said. But it was something along the lines of, you don't want to eat too much during the day because, you're running around a lot. Like, you want to fuel your body, obviously, but you don't want to eat so much that you're so bloated you can't do your next class or whatever. And in retrospect, she's right.
You don't want to overeat.
Exactly, which is what she was trying to say, but how she said it came off not quite what she intended, I don't think. So I got it in my head to not eat a whole lot while I was at school. So I thought I was being super, super healthy because I would bring snacks or I'd bring little portions of lunch or whatever, but I would usually find myself really, really hungry towards the end of the day. So I'd go and spend a bit of money on a booster juice or something, or I go to Tim's or something, and then I would feel bad because I had spent money on food when I had food at home, or because I thought I was overeating. And again, I'm not blaming this necessarily on her, but the comment definitely had this influence on me. So this teacher had a lot of gall and would talk a lot about bodies and would make comments about our bodies. And for whatever reason, I was usually exempt from these a lot, but I also didn't spend a lot of time around this teacher. So it was really the first time that I was one-on-one with her and got to, quote unquote, know her, and she got to know me. And I had heard the stories, I had seen the things happen, and I still had in the back of my head, she knows what you're eating, she's judging you based on what you're eating. And we're getting ready for Anything Goes auditions, and she says to me, who are you auditioning for? And I said, Reno Sweeney. And she said something along the lines of, oh, but insert person here will probably get it because they're that Sutton Foster look. You're small, so maybe you should go for Hope. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really feel like a Hope. I feel like I'd just be more comfortable as a Reno, but I'm not going to discredit it. I said to her, not really what I'm going for, but if that's what they see me as, that's what they see me as. Whatever. So the next time I go into a tutorial, I believe was leading up to the auditions or something. And she says to me something like, oh my goodness, you look so fit. You must work out a lot. You look super, super strong. You're doing amazing things. You're looking so good. And I was like, oh, thank you. I felt good in my body. And I was like, thanks. I feel like I'm really finally figuring out how to treat myself properly, whatever. And then in that same tutorial, she was like, yeah, I think you were right. Reno's the right choice for you. I think you'd make a really, really good Reno. And I agree, having heard you hear the Hope rep, I don't really know if it's suited to you. And I was like, no, I think that's correct. Yeah, even though I just said that, whatever. Well, I find out later that the person who went into a tutorial after me, I can't remember, I think she was after me. In her tutorial, she had said to her, something about, I don't know why they're considering Aurora for Hope. She's just not suited for Hope. But you're going to get Reno because you have that Sutton Foster look. And was going behind all of our backs and talking about our bodies to each other. And then I went into my very, very next tutorial. And this was after I was cast as Reno. And she looks at me and she says something along the lines of you're really going to have to work hard and work out a lot to play Reno. And I was like,
no.
Way to flip on a dime, A. B, I know you've been talking about my body to other people. So what the hell? And then I didn't get to play Reno. So maybe it's my fault. Maybe I just didn't work out enough. Maybe that's why there was a pandemic and we had to cancel our show. Who knows?
Damn it, Aurora.
Damn it, Aurora.
Yeah, I remember that first class with this teacher where she just said the same things. You don't want to eat too much during the day. And I went up to her after and I said to her face, 4 months ago, I got out of treatment for an eating disorder. So I'm going to eat. I would literally like have a Tupperware full of like pad thai and just be eating it in her class.
Good.
Because like, what are you going to do? Tell the person with an eating disorder to not eat?
Exactly.
With a restrictive eating disorder, because there are more eating disorders than just anorexia.
Yes. There was in my 3rd year, in one of our dance classes, we were asked to create a workout/eating diary. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'm feeling healthy and wealthy and wise and, I'll do it. I feel good. One of my other classmates also was recovering from an eating disorder. And that person went out to our teacher and was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. This is unhealthy for me. And they encouraged me to do the same. And I was like, I want to, but I also like feel like I'm in a good place where I can track myself properly and not have any trouble. Well, I had trouble. I had a lot of trouble. And when I handed in my diary, it was like only 4 weeks of work instead of the entire semester. And I wrote a little note saying, hi, I should have spoken to you about this, but I have a bit of an eating disorder and this was really triggering and I wasn't doing so well, so I didn't finish it. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. But it's like, why am I afraid to tell her that I have an eating disorder? Why am I afraid? Why is that so taboo? Oh, right, because we're in an industry that expects you to look a certain way and be a certain way. Right.
And they're like, if you have to develop an eating disorder to get there, are they really going to care? Because then they're going to still make money.
Exactly.
They don't care about the actors who in reality are the reason why Broadway and theater is so successful.
Yeah.
The reason theater brings in money is because of the actors.
Yeah.
And the people on the stage and the tech people. That's the reason why theater makes money, but they're so willing to bend us until we break.
Exactly.
So they can make $1.
Yeah. But God forbid you take a day off to rest or heal or look after yourself or go to a family event, God forbid, because then you're losing them money.
There were multiple situations when we were in school where I was in first year at the time, and all of first semester of first year, there were basically me and another student in my class. Her and I were basically at the school every single day from like 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. because we were in a lot of dance numbers. We were the dancers of the class. So we were in a lot of dance numbers. We were in a lot of like really heavy dancing. And then we also had class every single day. So we basically wake up in the morning. I would wake up at 6 a.m., do homework as I'm getting ready for school, as I'm eating breakfast, go to school, do all my classes for the day, have 15 minutes for food in the middle of the day, which wasn't even supposed to be in there. It was just because one of our teachers was like, you don't have a lunch break, through this entire day, and you have a dance clean after this. Like, no, I'm going to give you like a 15-20 minute break so you guys can like stuff some food in your face. We would do our classes, and then immediately after class, us two would go to dance clean, and we'd dance all night, get home. I'd basically stuff food in my face and then fall asleep. And then all of my assignments would be in late. So second semester, I was class rep along with another student in the class. We got called to the director of our program's office, and she wanted to talk to us about how our class handled last semester and how we were doing, because every teacher noticed we were pretty burnt out by like the third week.
Yeah.
Like it was week 3 and people were like, it was never a big argument that like caused a big issue in the class. It was just like stupid petty things of like, we would snap at each other for a moment and then be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to, I don't know why I did that. That was so wrong of me. Like, please forgive me. I will try to do better, which I always appreciated my class for doing. And this other person was not really on the same schedule that me and this other student were on, where we were basically, and all the guys, because the guys were in a lot of numbers, because penis privilege, if you have a penis, you're going to be in more numbers.
Exactly.
It was me and them. And so we go, and she's talking to us about it. And this other person goes, I think we're fine. And I go, no, we're not. We're not fine. And I like rambled for I think 15 minutes being like, this other student and I were at the school basically every single day from 9 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. We cannot do that. You cannot expect us to do that. And I had this conversation with other students. It was socially distant outdoors. We had masks on. It was super safe. Yesterday, some of my old classmates, and I said, they cannot expect us. They can't treat us as if we're still in the industry and give us industry level rehearsals while also expecting us to do the same amount of work. You have to pick one or the other. Pull back on rehearsals so we can do our schoolwork. Pull back on the schoolwork so we can do our rehearsals. You can't have both.
Yeah.
But, and this is gonna make me sound crazy. So when we were talking about Johnstown, have them work for 12 hours a day and then have many hours of like conditioning and these things. Catching it back, it's a brainwashing technique. Tire you out with your classwork. Come to rehearsal, we're going to tell you you need to lose weight, and you're going to be so tired that you just do it. And again, people that are listening to this are probably going to be like, bees going crazy right now, but it makes sense.
Yeah, you're
it
right.
makes so much sense because they're trying to fit us into the box that will make the straight white old men money.
Yeah.
Case closed.
That's it. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
Case closed.
And you know what's really, really sad? Bringing it back to how we started this conversation, what's really, really sad is despite all of this bullshit that we go through, there are still white men out there saying, well, if Scott Rudin's stepping back, that means all of our visionary leaders are gone.
Great new ones.
We don't break our back for 3-4 years in theater institutes being told that we are terrible, to have to build ourselves up again, to have to find our place in this industry with absolutely no help. If we're lucky, maybe some help. We don't break our backs doing that. We don't break our backs having to then create our own work because we are not good enough for an industry that only views one beauty standard as ideal, to be told that we are not visionary enough to create, to be in this industry. There are more visionary leaders than the straight white men. There is more imagination in this world than coming
the straight
from
white men.
the straight white men. And when you say that Scott Rudin stepping down is taking out one of our visionary leaders, one of our last visionary leaders, it's like, well, what do you expect is going to happen? Another one's going to step up.
I think something that, okay, again, this is going to be another thing where listeners are going to be like, bees going crazy. The Ratatouille musical. Teenagers on TikTok were able to basically create an entire fucking musical. It was creative.
Yeah.
It was new. It was different. And it was based off of something that they were just like, this would be funny. And they were passionate about it. If they can take something like Ratatouille and TikTok and make a fucking musical out of it, I'm sure that you can hire these people to write anything.
I'm going to say one thing here that might get me blacklisted from the industry, but I'm going to say it anyway because I stand by it. I'm not saying that, you know, if they get the right director or the right team in there, that like what makes it so wonderful would be completely gone. But if you look at the producers who are making the biggest waves in American New York specific theater, these are the ones who you call them visionary leaders? Are you sure? Because they're sucking what makes things inspirational and incredible out of it and just going for the money.
I think one of the best things about Ratatouille is that it brought so many, I love how this went to Ratatouille. It brought so many people from so many parts of the world, from so many different backgrounds. It wasn't just like only these middle-aged white straight men are putting on this thing. It was different people from different places coming together to create one project. And it shows that theater can be more than the straight white man.
Yeah.
Theater can be amazing things. And I think at the end of all of this, the question that comes around is like, some people are probably just like, if people who don't care are going to be like, well, what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we say what we are going to do about it.
Here's my big thing that will lead into what I'm sort of thinking. And I said it earlier, but Broadway is just a street. And we put so much pressure on Broadway being the end all and be all. If you can make it on Broadway, you've made it. And that's complete baloney. You can make it in theater anywhere you are. That's one of the wonderful things about theater as an industry, is that it is everywhere. You can make it as a community theater performer. And I think one of the first big steps we need to take is dismantling this system that is led by these white men in New York. There is more theater than just in New York City, same as there is more film than just in Los Angeles. So the first thing I think that we really need to start addressing is that if we keep insisting that the only theater that happens is in New York, we're never going to be able to move forward and create more, because we're always looking for what will sell on Broadway. And I'm going to tell you the honest truth, 1 in a million. And I mean that literally, 1 in a million is going to sell on Broadway. So unless you're writing exactly what that straight white man wants to see, it's not going to sell. Like, as much as I want the shows I write to be on Broadway, do you think they're going to be? About female serial killers, about women owning their bodies. Do you really think that's going to be on Broadway? Probably not, you know? I can dream, but probably not, because that's not what the straight white men want. So first things first is Broadway is just a place. Broadway is one place where theater takes place. I would love to go to Broadway because money, you know? And because I love that city so, so much. But first, look at it as it is, a street that has a lot of money in it. That's it. Second, what can we do to make sure that this abuse stops? What can we do? Talk about it, like we're doing now. Create our own work. Put ourselves in the room and put other voices that need to be heard in the room. I have made it part of my literal mission in life to ensure that the voices that need to be heard are in the room. I'm in a position where I am still trying to reach those people, and I am grappling to try and reach them so that they can be in the room. And it takes time when you're starting out, but that is the end goal, is to make sure those voices are in the room. And I want to be in that room so that I can ensure they're being heard. It is my responsibility as a straight white woman to make sure they are heard. It is my responsibility to ensure that this abuse stops. If I put them in a room, I need to be speaking up if they are being spoken over. I need to be ensuring that they are safe and being treated properly. So that's how I'm moving forward, is doing everything I can to end that abuse, putting myself in that position where I can tell you that you're wrong for saying that and here's why, you know? Making sure that the correct voices are in the room, kicking out the ones who want to oppress and hurt, and welcoming in the ones who are the actual visionary leaders that we need right now.
And I think a great way that you're doing that is with the Flair. You have a representative for Asian POC. You have a representative for Black culture and experience. You have a representative for mental health and the LGBTQ plus and gender, community. You have those people. We're looking for, people for the Latino, Latinx community, Hispanic community, like any community. We are looking for somebody to be a voice in the room.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind me saying we, because I mean, as a part of the,
you're part of the team. Yeah.
We want to open that. And I think the best thing we can do is, keep our, this company going in the right direction that the industry needs.
Exactly.
The biggest step I'm planning on taking when I return to school, and again, this is like, oh, you're not in school, you're not doing it now, but I've been educating myself a lot on the issues, especially of people of the gender minority, and people who don't necessarily identify with any gender or fluctuate between genders or are completely gender fluid, which that is I am a person who can speak upon that because I am a person who is gender fluid. When I go back to school, learning that and being to a point and understanding and knowing that at the end of the day, this is my path in theater. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm going to do. And if my path, if my brain is telling me and my heart is telling me that a character that is normally played very like cis straight, if that character needs to, if I feel that character needs to not be straight, or you know, a character that's always in dresses, if that character is going to wear pants one day, that character is going to wear pants. I plan on opening up the conversation within the school I will be returning to and talking about like, no, you know, in the holiday show, Christmas show, whatever you celebrate, I'm going to sing a song that's for a man, man with quotations, because what even is gender?
Someone's going to come at us. Somebody's going to listen to this in a year and come at us. What is gender?
Try and come at me. Try and explain it to me. I dare someone. You know what? I dare someone. I dare somebody to like give us an audio message being like, there are only two genders. And I'll be like, who the fuck cares? If you think there are only two genders, if somebody, they're like, what are you going to identify now? As an attack helicopter? What if I do? How does that hurt you? In the theater industry, having teachers tell me I can only sing songs that are written for female characters. Who fucking cares if I sing a song that's, if I kill it, who cares?
Right.
I sang Moving Too Fast for an audition, and the people who I was auditioning for was like, wait, you killed that.
To tie it all up, the abuse, not only in theater education institutions, but also in the theater industry, is deplorable. It's unacceptable. Actors should not be having to clean up the mess that producers and directors and costume designers, for example, are leaving behind them. We should not have to clean up the trauma that we're being left with. And again, we can only speak from the perspectives of white people. We can't speak for our POC friends, even though I know they have countless stories about the abuse they've endured. If you have any stories you would like to share with us, you can find our audio message link in our Instagram bio. I would love to do a second episode of this where we could talk to other people about their stories. As we said, make sure you're following Curtain Up 2021. Make sure you're following everybody on stage. And I encourage you to think about what you can do to ensure a safe, friendly, warm work experience, not only for people in theater, but for everybody that you ever work with in your life. What can you do to ensure that there is no abuse, there is no mistreatment? What can you do? Because it starts with one person. Yeah. So here's to Karen Olivo doing work they shouldn't have to do.
What are we going to try doing this week? We're going to try listening and learning.
Yeah.
From others. And I think you guys should try that too.
It's been a slice.
The podcast. And we have a work meeting in 20 minutes.
Speaking of the Flare. If you like this and want to listen to more of our podcasts, you can find them wherever you listen to your podcasts. But if you also like what we talked about with our company, The Flare, we do have a cabaret premiering. You can go give that a little watch, support us as a company, and support our upcoming works, which should be coming to you very soon.
Send us money. Did I ever tell you that somebody one time requested $1 from me, just randomly on PayPal, and said, please? Like, they someone I don't even know just requested $1 from me and was like, please.
I'm gonna start doing it.
No.
It's $1.
$1, and they were just like, please. Like, PLS.
Even better.
Oh, I'm broke. I can't believe, I love how that's how we're ending the podcast. Anyways, outro music. Dance to the outro music.